When I was 14 years old, my family made a big move from our home in England to the Republic of Ireland, where we ended up living for the next 6 years. At first, we settled in the northwest part of the country, but after about a year, my dad got a new job in a city located in the Irish Midlands, so we packed up and moved once again. My parents bought a cozy little cottage on the outskirts of a very small village. One of those places that was really just a stopping point between two larger towns. The village was so tiny and isolated that there was almost nothing to do for entertainment. However, not long after moving there, I began exploring the surrounding countryside with my loyal border collie, Maisie. During one of our adventures, we discovered a vast stretch of bogland that contained a man-made forest. It became our favorite spot, and every weekend or during school breaks, I would take Maisie there to walk along the old railway tracks that were once used for transporting peat. After several months of visiting the same bogland, I suddenly stopped going. Looking back, I can't quite remember the exact reason. Maybe it was because the uneven, bumpy ground always left me with painful blisters, or maybe it was because I had this nagging feeling that I wasn't supposed to be there, even though I technically wasn't trespassing. Either way, I eventually abandoned those walks. Since the bogland was no longer an option, my dad started taking Maisie and me to a different place, a public forest just outside one of the nearby towns where I attended school. Because it was about a 20-minute drive away, my routine was simple. Dad would drop us off, leave to run errands or go home, and then return to pick us up 2 or 3 hours later. What I loved most about these woods was how peaceful they were. Most of the time, we'd only encounter the occasional family, another dog walker, or a lone jogger passing by. It was the perfect place to unwind. One particular evening, my dad dropped Maisie and me off at the forest as usual, telling me he'd be back to pick us up after he finished some errands. We started our walk along the main trail, enjoying the quiet atmosphere as the sun began to set. As the daylight faded, I decided it was time to head back toward the car park, not wanting to be caught in the woods after dark. To save time, I chose to take a shortcut through one of the many narrow side trails that branched off from the main path. Maisie and I had walked these trails many times before and I knew them well. Along one of them, we often passed a small, teepee-shaped hut made of stacked logs. Sometimes just for fun, I would play a little game of hide-and-seek with Maisie. I'd duck inside the hut while she wasn't looking, and she'd spend the next few minutes sniffing around the outside, completely baffled as to where I'd gone, never realizing she could just walk right in to find me. I don't remember if I played that game with her on this particular evening, but I do remember what happened next. As we made our way down the side trail, I turned to glance behind me, and that's when I saw him. A man. About 20 meters back, he had just turned onto the same narrow path we were on. I don't know why, but the second I noticed him, a cold, uneasy feeling settled in my stomach. There was something about him, maybe the way he walked or maybe just the fact that he had appeared so suddenly, that set off alarm bells in my head. I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Telling myself I was probably just being paranoid, I quickly clipped Maisie's leash back onto her collar and picked up my pace, hurrying toward the main trail. A few minutes later, we reached the wider path, but by now the evening had grown much darker. Despite my attempts to calm myself down, I couldn't resist looking back again, and sure enough, the man was still there. Only now he was much closer, maybe 10 meters behind us. My heart started pounding. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe he was just another walker taking the same route. Maybe he wasn't actually following me, but my instincts screamed otherwise. Thinking fast, I pulled out my phone and called my dad, hoping he was already waiting in the car park. But he didn't answer. I told myself he was probably still driving and that he'd be there soon. By the time Maisie and I finally reached the car park, it was almost completely dark. The parking area was nearly empty, only one car was there and it wasn't my dad's. Trying to stay calm, I sat down on a picnic bench to wait, keeping my phone in my hand just in case. I kept telling myself that the man from the trail wasn't actually following me, that I was just letting my imagination run wild. But then I heard footsteps. My breath caught in my throat as the same man emerged from the darkness, walking straight toward the car park. I quickly looked down at my phone, pretending to be distracted, hoping he wouldn't approach me. To my relief, he walked right past me, but then he got into the only car in the lot. And he didn't leave. The engine turned on, the headlights lit up, but the car didn't move. He just sat there waiting. 20 minutes passed. My dad still wasn't there. I tried calling and texting again, but still no answer. The whole time, the man remained in his car, engine running, doing absolutely nothing. The longer it went on, the more unnerved I became. I kept trying to come up with explanations. Maybe he was lost, maybe he was waiting for someone, but none of them made sense. Why would he just sit there in an empty car park at night? To make matters worse, Maisie was acting strange. She kept whining and scratching at the dirt beneath the bench, digging a surprisingly deep hole. She was always a nervous dog, but this was different, like she sensed something was wrong too. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the man reversed out of his parking spot and drove away. The moment his taillights disappeared, I let out a shaky breath, relief washing over me. 10 minutes later, my dad finally showed up. His excuse? He had forgotten he was supposed to pick us up. What really happened? To this day, I don't know if that man was actually following me. I don't know why he sat in his car for 20 minutes without moving. Maybe he was just a harmless stranger with his own reasons for being there. Or maybe I narrowly avoided something much worse. But I did learn two very important lessons that night. My dad can be incredibly absent-minded when it comes to picking up his own child from a dark forest at night. No matter how familiar or safe a place seems, you should never hike alone in the woods after sunset. And honestly, I've never broken that second rule again.